there's kind of no denying, at least from a recognizable, if you had to like look, how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? There's no denying that evil takes place, you know, like you could come up with any number of massacres throughout history, and you say that's an evil act.
There's no question.
Right.
Right.
So evil is a thing that's real.
If there's good, there's evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there have been many, many things that people have done. You're like, wow, good exists in the world. There is still good. So we know both those things are real things. We just don't know what's the root of them all. And are there really angels and demons, or are those the scapegoats for this bizarre dance of good and evil that just exists in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it weren't, for Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there wouldn't be any perception of good and evil. It'd just be true or false. Which is, the reason that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, because in the beginning, it was, they were living in a world of either, truth or falsehood.
You're right.
And after eating the fruit of the difference between good and evil, they became opinionated. Oh, that's good, I like it. That's bad, I don't like it. But the issue of true or false got became muddled.
Yeah.
And they no longer were fit inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, of paradise.
What's your take on Lilith?
Well, yeah, Lilith. Well, there's no mention of her in the Bible per se, but there's a lot of mention of her in the rabbinic literature that sprung up after the Bible. Yeah. The story is that I think after Cain killed Abel, that Adam. No. Was it that after that? I think it was after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. That they stopped having sex. So Adam, then was just sleeping, with Lilith, and they spawned innumerable demons as a result of their relationship. Yeah, and after a while, Adam and Eve, reconciled, and they got the things together again. Yeah, but Lilith, plays a role in the understanding of evil in the world, like it's the result of the spawn of Lilith.
What do you think Lilith was originally? If it was a thing?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's called, midrash. It's the explication of the Bible, by the rabbis. So it's what's called extra-biblical. Yeah, and I've only looked into extra-biblical stuff to a certain extent.
What's the source of that stuff?
The imagination. And I think, the surrounding environment, societies, culture, influenced by the Greeks, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Hittites. There's a lot of accumulation of other cultures onto interpreting the stories that occur in the text. A lot of fanciful things and entertaining things, like, for example, Lilith is the source of the demonic entities out there.
Yeah, I found out about Lilith like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I never even heard about it. Do you remember when we found out about Lilith? Somebody brought it up on a show, right?
Yeah, who brought it up, I'm wondering.
I don't remember, but I was like, what? Who's Lilith?
Yeah, was it Jordan Peterson?
It could have been.
Yeah, but
very
because
possibly.
He's a keen student of the Bible.
Very possibly. It was him. I do not remember, though. But I remember thinking, like, wow. Like, and then the original story. Like, so when you're talking about the biblical translations of the Adam and Eve story that we're all accustomed to, it's all a watered down sort of, or a strange translated version of the ancient Hebrew. But you've read the actual ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, what did you get out of it? Like, what did you...
Well, most of the translations of the Hebrew Bible are quite good. Like, the King James Version, it's very accurate. Yeah, it's a bit, stilted.
Is anything missing in the translation from when you read it in ancient Hebrew, or do you think it's pretty clear?
It's fairly one-to-one correspondence between the Hebrew words and the English translation. Certain things are interpreted through a Christian lens because the Christians wrote the King James Bible translation.
Right.
Yeah. But the words and the grammar and the narratives, they're pretty much accurate. Yeah. They spent a lot of time working on painstaking, translations. So, there was a responsibility to do it accurately.
Imagine that story, like trying to like pass that one down for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so there was only two people, and then there was an apple.
Right.
And a snake talked Eve into eating that apple, and everything got fucked.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very strange story, isn't it?
Very strange story. What do you think it really was all about?
I think there were two people named Adam and Eve.
For real?
As if they were real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you imagine that there was an Adam and Eve and you visualize the garden they were in and the snake and their interactions, there you have it.
So you think the biblical interpretation is a literal recalling of actual events that took place?
No.
No.
I don't think that. Well, it's like if you smoke DMT and you enter into this world, it's true, it's overwhelmingly convincing, it's got its own laws, its own system. Things are regular. Like certain things happen, certain interactions take place. Yeah, and you're there. You're convinced it's real, and you interact with it to the best of your ability. So I think that's the case with the narratives in the text. It's not. It isn't a matter of interpreting what they mean, as much as understanding what happened.
Boy, that's obscure. So it's not interpreting what they mean, but understanding what happened.
Yeah, what did the snake say to Eve?
So a snake really talked to Eve, though.
It was as if a snake talked to Eve.
As if.
Yeah.
So perhaps a psychedelic experience, perhaps an altered state of consciousness.
No, I think it was a case of a woman standing near a tree and a snake coming up to her and saying certain things, and they have a conversation.
For real, for real.
As if it were real. Well, the stories have been told so many times.
Right, that's the problem.
And, they seem... Well, if you...
Seems like they're blaming everything on Eve, too, which is like a little suspect. I like to hear her side of it.
Well, the one who got punished without even having a chance to explain himself was the snake. So God asks Adam what happened, and he asks Eve what happened, and he just lays it on the snake.
Right.
Yeah.
And the snake's like, I didn't tell her anything. I can't even talk.
Well,
this lady wanted to eat that apple, and she blamed me.
Well, back then, snakes could talk. Or in that world, snakes talk.
How so?
Well, they were the wisest of all the animals in the garden. So, they could speak.
Right, but you speak of these things as if, like we're talking about when you go to the zoo, the monkeys swing from the vines, it's normal. Snakes talk.
Well, it's a bit of a paradox. Yeah, like if you...
Let me ask you this.
So if you treat those stories as if they were real, you're opening yourself up to this universe of Adam and Eve were in the garden. Then they had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Then Cain had children, and his children begot the 70 nations. And then there was a flood because mankind was bad. Noah and his family survived. They all spoke one language afterwards. There was on a tower. There was Nimrod, there was Abraham, there was Isaac and Jacob. So it's this world which seems to be quite coherent, quite consistent. It all ties together. It's quite consistent from book to book, from narrative to narrative. It is a different way of looking at the Bible. It isn't dogma like you have to do this or you have to do that. Or it isn't like a Jungian archetype or a psychodynamic, wish fulfillment. It's this world that that is articulated, spelled out in a very ancient, very influential text.
So, is it also possible that something completely different took place, but that over time and over a oral tradition of who knows how many hundreds of years before they actually wrote it down? And then writing it down, that you're getting a version of the actual event that's very different than what really took place. But you think about it like the version in the scripture. And if you think about it in the version of Scripture, are you thinking about it like as if this was an event as recorded, or are you thinking this is a representation of an archetype or some sort of moment in human history that they're trying to recollect and pass down?
Well, if you
that makes any
consider,
sense.
yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, if you consider, the text to be prophetically received, prophecy is communication between the divine and man, and the text was prophetically received. In fact, Philo of Alexandria, one of Terence McKenna's heroes, used to say, the most accurate historians were the prophets. Because they heard it, directly, from the initiator of the event, the witness of the event, the one who, could understand the event in the huge context. So it's a prophetically received, text, which means it contains information received from a spiritual sort of level, which you would think is a universal field of sorts.
How much have you ever paid attention, if at all, to any of that ancient Sumerian stuff, like the Anunnaki and...
Some. Yeah, I watched this really great documentary a few years back. Yeah, but I wouldn't consider myself as knowing much about it.
Right. That, to me, is one of the weirder origin stories.
Yeah. So, what is that origin story? I recall it quite fascinating, but not the details.
Well, there's multiple versions of it. First of all, the story of this, the fantastic story, is told by Zecharia Sitchin. So Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet, and he wrote several other books. He was a biblical scholar and a linguist, and he spent a lot of time studying the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform. And what he believes is that it tells a story of an ancient relationship between a race of beings on a far distant planet that's in an elliptical orbit, and it comes near Earth every 3,600 years, and that they had engineered human beings out of lower primates. They had accelerated our evolution, and that all of what we know about the cosmos, all of what we know about, they have these detailed, I don't see the ancient tablets that have a detailed map of the solar system from 6,000 years ago.
Right, okay.
They have the sun in the center and all the moon, and they have these really enormous beings. And these enormous beings were supposed to be these things called the Anunnaki.
Okay.
And the literal translation is those from heaven to earth came.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the weirder,
Anunnaki.
If you love a great science fiction version of the origin story of humans, it's the most fun one.
Yeah, it brings to mind, the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which occur in the story of the flood and Noah.
The Nephilim, too.
Yeah, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, they were huge. They were giants.
Yes. Yeah.
Men of renown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they intermarried, or they had sex with the daughters of man, and from them came a race.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that story is interpreted or perceived through the lens of the Hebrew Bible too.
Really?
Yeah. Well, there are, that is a story in the text. Before the flood, is the B'nai Elohim, come down to earth. They have intercourse with, the daughters of man, and out of those relationships, comes this race of giants.
That's the most fun one.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, they all got swept away in the flood. So that's an interesting turn of events.
Well, if you interpret the flood as the Younger Dryas impact theory, which created the flood, which lines up.
Right. That does line up.
Yeah. It lines up time-wise, lines up with how it would go down. Yeah. Just no evidence of giants. That's the only thing we're missing. If they found some giants.
Well, in the meantime, you can assume that the giants were real.
Stories of giants.
I want that to be real so bad. I want all of
That
this
the
to be real.
Smithsonian's been hiding the information. Those are the big conspiracies.
Could be.
Down in their basement, they've got like a 10-foot tall human being. A race of giants that existed, roamed the earth.
Yeah.
David and Goliath's a real story.
It just seems like they wouldn't be gone. They wouldn't be the ones that would have been killed off.
Unless, in the cataclysm, like the Younger Dryas impact theory, there wasn't enough food.
Oh,
and they died off, Because if you're that big, you need to eat a lot.
So you think they were around like way long ago?
Way
and
long
died
ago.
off way long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think like recently. But I think like it is, there's so many stories and so many cultures have these stories, even in the Bible, of a race of giants.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it couldn't just be big people.
Right.
It seems like what they're talking about is something crazy.
I guess it could be if you're just because if you're just mythologizing. There's no way that's a word, but if you're just turning something that is real, this is the same with like a dragon. People obviously just get inspired by things that are around them. They start to morph into things. I mean, there was no fire-breathing animal flying around.
Probably crocodiles and shit like that.
Yeah, crocodiles, and then there are like cobras that spit venom, which obviously gets in your eyes. Probably going to burn like a son of a bitch. So like there's like the fire myth. I mean,
and people exaggerate.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So like people will take somebody who is a big son of a bitch and they go, "Oh, well, let's exaggerate and say that the guy he fought was 9 feet tall instead of 6'5".
Exactly.
Which he probably was. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, when you talk about races of these giants, you could also be talking about like people from Iceland.
Yeah.
Right?
Who were naturally
enormous
big as
Viking
hell.
dudes.
Yeah.
Who were always win those fucking strongman competitions. Those guys there's giants up there. Like 400, like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. Like that kind of person. So you think about that. Like that's that size human.
Right.
There could have been a bunch of those around, and maybe that's what they were talking about, giants. Or there could have been like a specific race of humans. Like they keep finding these additional types of humans. Like they found Denisovans fairly recently, and then that other one that we brought up the other day, the big-headed people. That's fairly recently. They've discovered that this is a completely different branch. That there may, but here's the thing: if they did find those, would they tell us? Like if archaeologists, like who would put the cap on that? If they found like a 10-foot human under like a just gigantic dead human with a huge sword underground, like would they just say we're wrong, giants existed, or would they go people can't handle this?
That's a tough because that's the answer to, or that's the question for so many things.
They might say people can't handle it. It's not outside the realm of possibility.
I would say, they probably say.
Isn't that infuriating?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if it was you? Now imagine you're out in West Texas, wherever you are, hanging out with your friends, and somebody notices something in the ground, and you start digging, and you pull out a fucking thigh bone that's this big, and you plop it down. You go, what the fuck is that? And then you got a buddy who works at the university nearby, and he starts digging. He's like, hey, dude, this is a fucking human foot. And he pulls out a human foot that's size 38. And you're like, what is going on, man? And so then you bring in some experts and like, holy shit, dude, this is a giant. And then they do DNA tests. They find out it's a real actual creature.
Yeah. I'm telling everyone.
Yeah. They're going to kill you. They're going to kill you. The scientists will kill you. They're going to run you off the road.
Yeah, I get
Look at
that.
The longest, or I guess would be the tallest
The people have ever found?
that they've ever found. It was found in China. It's supposedly about 4,400 years old. Would have been about 16, 18 years old. The weird thing here is, though, that it says there was 3 drill holes found in the skull, and they don't know why.
Whoa, drill holes. How big was it?
6'4".
Oh.
Oh, fuck me.
Well, back then, that was probably fucking huge.
Well, you said they found it in China?
Yeah.
That's a giant.
And they're calling it, they call it
Well, it
giant.
might be Mongolian,
Well,
I
just
just looked
compared
up-
to the Chinese that are found, they're probably like, holy shit, this
Goliath is anywhere from modern day, maybe they say up to 6'6", but they're like taking the word for word from the Bible, it'd have been about 9'9".
Yeah, that's what I always thought. That's what I always
I don't know how to
remember
see
as
a
a
weight,
kid.
weight size.
Right. Well, if you're back then, nobody had any food, and the average man was probably like 5'4". So if you encounter some dude who's 6'6", some big jack guy, that is a giant.
That's a giant.
And then also, like, you got to think human beings, if they exist today and they're 6'6", they had a potential to be that big back then. They just didn't get the food.
Yeah.
But if you are in some very nutrient-rich environment, Look at
Yao
Ming
Ming
versus,
and
both those guys play pro basketball.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Is it Muggsy Bogues?
Muggsy
On
Bogues,
the left?
yeah.
But there's smaller people that exist that can function and do stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is that the potential for that guy, the Yao guy, who's how tall is he?
7'7", I think.
Right,
Yeah,
that exists
yeah.
in the human genome, right? That's not like we engineered them like we did dogs.
Right.
Like that exists.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe back then, if you had a ton of food and you didn't have to worry about war, like, and people
Yeah.
just kept breeding and growing and getting nutrient rich, because the thing about people in the past was they didn't have any fucking food, man.
Yeah.
Like the average size of a guy who fought in the Civil War was, I think, 125 pounds or something crazy like that.
5'4" and 120, I think, is
Nuts.
the thing. Yeah.
Starving to death.
It's like a
Starving to death,
15
shooting people with
it's
muskets.
Like a 14-year-old girl. I mean, that's
Nuts.
like, yeah.
Right? And all they needed
Yeah.
was food. You know, you give them protein, and then they grow normal sized, which is
Yeah.
really wild.
Yeah. Because there's tons of people that are well over 7 feet. It's
Yeah.
not like it is an anomaly compared to every.
Speaking of, there's one guy in the Civil War 7'6". He would have
7'6".
stood out
Whoa.
real good, but everybody else was 5'8", average.
He was
5'8".
7'6" in the Civil War. Holy shit.
Is that? Oh, that's not a picture of him, I guess. Yeah. Never
But
mind, never
the
mind.
thing
But yeah.
about the stories in the Bible, though, it's like these are like mystical giants, the Nephilim, you know?
If you enjoyed today's episode on JRE Plus, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.